As I walked down through Chatham Street, a fair maid I did meet. She asked me to see her home, she lived in Bleecker Street. To me away, Santy, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can you dance the polka?
The Long Haul Podcast, America's Irish Voice. Interviews with inspiring immigrants, renowned Irish personalities, and discussions on all things Irish America. Presented by Michael Dorgan and Johnny Kennedy.
You Santy, my dear Annie.
In this podcast, we speak to Sandra Feeney Charles, the Executive Director at the Ashling Irish Community and Cultural Centre in Yonkers. The centre has played an important role in the lives of Irish immigrants and Irish Americans over the past 25 years. This year, the group was part of a tristate effort to raise funds for Irish Americans in need during COVID-19 called Slainte2020. Sandra exclusively reveals to us the staggering amount of cash that has been raised so far. She explains the inspirational Team Ashling concept and describes how Team Ashling members raise money for Slainte2020. We discuss how the pandemic has affected the elderly and undocumented immigrants. We also chat about the mental health struggles people have faced during COVID-19. But first, we asked Sandra to give us a brief history about the centre and what it offers the community.
So, you're familiar with the term Jack of all trades? I have a very fancy title, Executive Director, but I'm technically Jack of all trades. So, the Ashling Centre started about 24 years ago with a very small group of people, a couple of ministers with the Irish Charities, Catholic Charities Organisation, and with a couple of volunteers. They created a little centre, not quite in Yonkers, but they were ready to meet the needs of the newly arriving immigrants. And as the numbers of immigrants arriving in America, and particularly in New York, grew, they decided that they'd need to expand a little bit. So they found a home in Yonkers, set up an office. It was pretty well established pretty quickly by the founding members, who formed a board and set in motion the services that were needed at the time, particularly to meet the needs of the newly arriving immigrant, like I said, which would have been help finding accommodation, help finding work, trying to figure out the differences between where they've come from and where they are right now, because we've very different society and culture. And as the years went by, the centre has grown. Families began to settle, and along with immigrants arriving, they now have families with children and seniors. So the programs have grown to include karate for little guys like this, and art classes, and Zumba classes for mom, yoga. We have a thriving community of about 100 seniors. The program they take part in is called Young at Heart. They range in age from about 60 to 93.
Wow.
Senior, it's amazing. Anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week they come down to the centre. So twice a week we serve hot lunch for them. And then there's a book club, there's chair yoga. It's the sweetest thing in the world to walk in on Friday morning and see the girl that cleans the centre likes to set up the chairs for the seniors. And you know she does it with love. There's a circle of chairs, of about 30 chairs. And then at 12:30, the seniors arrive, they sit in their chair, and I call myself a volunteer yoga teacher. I've taught that class a couple of times, just subbing for the regular teacher, and it would just do your heart good to see how enthusiastic they are and how good they feel afterwards. And when they say thanks for that, it was great. You know they genuinely mean it. So we have a huge welfare program that spans from looking out for those seniors, looking after their mental health needs. For example, if someone has a bereavement and they're very down, the social worker is popping in and out during lunch. She helps to serve the lunch. She'll keep an eye on the folks, and if she sees someone needs a little chat or a helping hand, she'll be the first one to discreetly tap them on the shoulder and say, do you want to pop in for a chat and a cup of tea? That kind of thing. It goes from there to the most serious forms of mental health support, where people might be suicidal. We also have a very, very well attended AA meeting that takes place every week. And then we have, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to
What day is that? Me and Michael will be up. What day is that?
We'll give you a shout.
Well, we heard the chairs were in circle. I was
Exactly.
thinking, I was going to make that joke when you were saying about all the chairs in a circle. I was like, that girl's been to an AA meeting. She knows how to put the chairs out.
That too, right? So then we also have a great cultural program. We have classes so there's Bridget Flynn's dance School of Irish Dance downstairs. We have the Dawn Doherty School of Music teaches group and private lessons in Irish singing, Irish music. There's a ballet group, and we have a not new, they're almost 2 years old now. Our Cayley Band is a phenomenal group of young musicians from the community who don't perform competitively with the centre. This is purely cultural. Gives them an opportunity to showcase their talent, and I'm not biased when I say this. None of my kids are in it yet, shamefully, but they are a really, really good group of musicians. If anybody saw the Team Ashling Facebook Live last week, they'd have seen the Irish Centre Cayley Band. Then did I just say Team Ashling? One of our...
Hold on.
Oh yes, I love it. I'm so happy to see that. Well done, and you look good too. So Team Ashling is phenomenal. You could probably talk more about Team Ashling than I could, Michael. It's the most phenomenal group of individuals, volunteers from everywhere, from the far end of Queens up through the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, all the way up through Yonkers, up as far as Rockland County. We have members who like to run or walk, run at a competitive pace, take a gentle jog, and groups meet up regularly, very often on Saturday or Sunday, and even throughout the social distancing, they've been able to meet, keep socially distanced while they're having a little chit chat and warm up, and then they go off and run at whatever pace suits them and, makes them happy. So one of the benefits of Team Ashling obviously is that you set your goal and you meet it in a very friendly, sort of a welcoming environment. The big benefit of Team Ashling that I've been hearing so much about, and I see it every time I meet these guys and girls, is the social connection. The members of Team Ashling have rekindled old friendships. You start working, you have a family, you might be working in the city. You don't get to see people after a certain point, unless you're making it your business to go to the pub at the weekend. And for a lot of us, it's just not an option, especially if you have 2 or 3 kids at home. But this hour or hour and a half on Saturday or Sunday morning, they're meeting up in Tibbetts Park or Juniper Park or wherever they are. They do their little warm-up and off they go, have a little chit-chat along the way. So there's a lot of social reconnecting and then meeting new friends. And the other component that you don't really plan for but has really shown its true colours, especially through the whole COVID pandemic, is the social support. The Team Ashling Challenge for the month of May was to run whatever your form of 5K was. And for the more, let's say, aggressive runners, some did half marathons. A couple of amazing people, Seamus Kane, I think, who was back in Kerry, and our own Catherine Flood here actually ran marathons on the morning of the 31st of May. There's a lot of community support in Team Ashling. And that's the start of it.
So as you know, Sandra, I was involved with Team Ashling last year, doing a bit of video work and social media work, and I got a first-hand experience of the Ashling Centre, and I was up there a few times, and the work there, when you see the old people in there for the book reading club when I was up there, and I was doing the video for the dinner dance, and just the elderly people, it's just a hive of activity. It's a great centre. And the Team Ashling component was just really put a face on the Ashling Centre, I think, because when I was there last year, when at the marathon, and there was 300 people running the marathon for Team Ashling, and they had those orange tops on, and it was just really it just really hit home the community spirit of the Ashling Centre. And even when I was at the dinner dance, and the amount of people, I was just speaking to on the side how much the Ashling Centre means to people over the last quarter of a century. You know, the help that they gave them along the way, it was just a great avenue. So it's a like, if people aren't aware of it, it's up there. McLean, I think I was wrong. It's not Yonkers.
No, you're right. It is.
All right,
it is. You're spot on. It's funny. Yonkers and the Bronx are literally, you know, you could draw a line down the middle of McLean Avenue, and half of it is Yonkers and half of it is.
Okay. I think I was saying the Bronx to people last year, and they were saying, no, we're in Yonkers.
Yeah.
So, and Team Ashling was the brainchild of one of the volunteers, or Catch from Flood, wasn't it? And it was just a great. And I was speaking to people just how it made people reconnect with people they had grown up with, and it's like it's if you're not involved with something like a GA or something like that you're going to lose touch with people, and it was just a great way of reconnecting with people. And then so Team Ashling was kind of rolled out again this year for Slainte2020, the big fundraiser for the Irish American community here. So will you just tell us who's involved with the Slainte2020? There's a few groups involved in it, and what Team Ashling did for it, Sandra.
So just so you know, Team Ashling, without any prompting from the Ashling Centre, the team captains themselves, all of whom are volunteers, just took it on their own initiative to get out there and start fundraising. So very quickly after we realised the seriousness and the breadth of impact that COVID-19 was wreaking on the community, and with concern for everybody really, but particularly people in the hospital, we were very keenly aware that there were people in the hospitality industry that were going to suffer quickly and probably long term. Katrina Clark, who is our chairperson and a business owner on McLean Avenue, had discussions with a couple of other business owners on McLean Avenue, and it was out of their concern for the local community. And Woodlawn is a tight-knit community. So it was out of their concern for the local community that they thought, look, we can't just sit by and do nothing. And they put the word out, and the response was immediately yes from those that were asked for help. So very quickly a steering committee was formed, and the steering committee was Joan Henchy, the president of the New York GAA, Michael Morley, the first vice president of the United Irish Counties Association, Siobhan Dennehy, the director of the Emerald Isle Immigration Centre that has an office in the Bronx and also out in Queens, Paul from the New York Irish Centre in Long Island City, and Katrina and myself from the Ashling Irish Centre. So the committee convened by Zoom. It's amazing how quickly we all got to technology, even the ones that weren't so familiar. And
nobody heard of Zoom before March, I don't think. I never heard of bleeding Zoom before March, and this is about my fifth one to do. Jesus.
It's crazy.
Unbelievable. Oh, it's amazing.
They got on board, and we decided very quickly that we had to reach out and raise as much as we could. We figured that if we raised 100,000, we'd be doing really, really well. And we set up between us, so we had collective experience in one area or another. So we decided that we'd use our collective experience to roll it out, to make sure that every penny that was raised would be distributed to people who really needed help. That there would be no expenses involved, and that we would do it to the highest standard possible. So Katrina brought on board an amazing man, Shane Humphreys, who is a lawyer by training, to help oversee everything that was being done. And
Shane runs the Dublin Society, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I know Shane well, yeah.
He's
good
cool.
guy. Yeah.
Every email finishes with "need the love."
Yeah, he's a great guy. Very good man.
So a vetting system was set up, a website was created, in fact, the fastest website I ever saw being designed. An application form was approved, and everything went live within about, I'd say, 2 weeks. We had 40,000 raised within 2 days of the site going up. The Irish government came on board very, very quickly and offered support immediately. And they've been very supportive of everything that we've been doing. To date, we've raised about just almost 450,000.
Whoa.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
didn't realise it was that much.
Guess
Whoa.
what? Even more wow. That money has all been distributed within, I would say, within 10 days of anything coming in, it's going back out again. We've had well over 400 applicants. So there was a meeting today, another one tomorrow, reviewing the next batch coming in. There's been, with 400 and change applications so far, on my last count, we were at 420. We have almost 700 individuals attached to those applications. 100 of those are kids. So obviously you have families with 2 or 3 children. And the most difficult part, like 450 sounds amazing, but at the beginning, when we had 100,000 and we had 200 applications, I'll tell you what, it was no joke trying to figure out, how do you do this? You know, what do you do? How do you decide who gets what? So
So generally what it is for Sandra, just to explain to people, it's for people that don't qualify for the welfare, that they basically, their income has ended, which is generally, as you said, a lot of people in the service industry, bartenders, waitresses, and a lot of people. Is that how it works?
That's how it works. So basically, anybody in the tri-state area that has an Irish passport or an Irish connection was and is eligible to apply for support. People who don't have any other access to physical support, so either you're undocumented or you're transitioning from one visa to another, so you can't apply for unemployment. You haven't worked for long enough to be able to apply for unemployment, so you don't get anything from anybody else. You've nowhere else to turn to. So Slainte is kind of the last resort. And it's amazing, actually. I think Irish pride is a very heavy burden to bear. It's amazing how a lot of people didn't reach out in the beginning, but then when they did, you could actually hear the shame in their voice when they're writing. Like, people did say, "I'm sorry to be asking. I feel so bad. I'm embarrassed to apply." It make you so sad to think that people, and these are the very families that when there's a benefit out in Sunnyside or Woodside or up in Rory Donuts, they're the guys that are going to come along and drop $100 in the bucket and not ask a question, you know.
And they're the same ones that are paying their rent at the moment. They're paying everything. And people are saying, "Oh, you don't have to pay your rent. You can't get evicted." They don't want to live like that. They still want to pay the rent. And they still want to do the thing. And it's an amazing thing. Like, we've seen it before, like with the, Kevin Bell, the type of thing. But it's amazing at this time to see it, because people that are given that money, generally, let's be honest, they don't know what's down the road for themselves either. They could be, we don't. It's not like there's light at the end of the day. Obviously, this week we've seen some good news and stuff. But we still don't know what January is going to be like. I personally think any bars that will open, I think a lot of them will close after they open. I hope I'm wrong on that, but obviously we won't get into it, but the PPP loans and all that have been amazing. But for these people to see is raise that amount of money, as you say, it gives you some pride, doesn't it? Like, it gives you some buzz that when you see people doing that type of things, it really does. Like, I love it.
Yeah, you know what? It restores your faith in humanity, and it's not just. So we've had checks coming from Houston, Houston, Texas, South Carolina. Michael Morley was telling me that he has goddaughters in Australia and South Africa, and his own kids in 2 other countries that have all contributed. Like, there's contributions coming from so many different places. And all of the GAA did a phenomenal. They've done several drives here, and they have a lot of support. They've challenged every county association in Ireland to make a contribution. Local individuals here, local business owners who are who've been closed, technically out of business for the last 3 months, supporting. So the level of support has been phenomenal. The system was set up to support people who had no access to any other type of financial support, and the goal was to give them one helping hand so that they could make a decision about what they were going to do going forward, so that they weren't going to be waiting for the landlord to bang on the door, or that they couldn't go grocery shopping. It wasn't an awful lot of money, but hopefully it was enough just to tide people over, to give them a chance, so that they didn't have to run to Kennedy Airport straight away. So they could buy groceries for another couple of weeks, pay a portion of their rent, and take a breath and make an informed decision. Do I have what I need to ride this out, or do I need to get out of town? So that was, I mean, we'd love to be able to support everybody for as long as possible. It's not possible to do that. So it really was just to give people a chance to take a breather and take the pressure off for a little while, until things sort of come back to whatever the new form of normal is going to be.
Sandra, how do you find, like, that other gentleman that you found and you brought on the walk, which is brilliant, but how do you find the other guys that are like that? Like, unfortunately, they probably lived relatively, hopefully month by month, not week by week, but his only bit of company was the bar. He was in the bar every night, he had his few bottles, and but like, there's a lot more of them there now. And they're sitting at home now and drinking at home and stuff like that, and probably running out of funds and stuff like. How do you find the other ones? How do you get to them? It's very difficult for you, hopefully friends or someone will point them out. But
I think you've hit on a really, really pertinent topic right now. When this started, one of the first things that we did at the Aisling Centre was put blue posters everywhere. First of all, thanking the frontline workers and letting people know that we're here. The doors are closed, but the Aisling Centre staff are all working. Everybody took their computer home and everybody has a phone, and we're all here. And I think people who had been through Hurricane Katrina and Sandy and other sorts of disasters were kind of scratching their heads, wondering why aren't the phones hopping off the hooks? We were getting calls about visas and information about visas and referring people to the consulate and things like that. But we didn't actually get a whole lot of phone calls to the centre for the first month, which was kind of strange, because people really didn't know what was going on for a start. Secondly, they probably had enough to tide them over for a while. And thirdly, they really didn't want to ask for help. I think a lot of people have asked for help out of necessity. One of the things that we've definitely noticed is, and I think this is true to say of all communities, there are definitely a lot more people relying on the bottle to get them back. We all do it. It's unless you're a non-drinker, and good luck to you if you can handle it. I think everybody would agree that
we're struggling. The two of us are struggling, but we're getting there. we don't. Neither of us drink, so but that's why I say I'm in the bar business and I see it and I know, like, the other side of it. I've seen the issues. But nearly when they were in the bar, they knew PJ behind the bar. They knew, and he was their guy. And not everybody came here. Like, I don't know each of your, like, I know Michael's situation, but not everybody came over here. It was great. Some of these people left Ireland in the 80s and stuff like that, and they don't really go home that much. They don't go for All Irelands. They don't get, even if they can travel, and they've transformed their little village life in Ireland to McLean Avenue or to Woodside or to Sunnyside. And now you've taken away that bar from them. Mm-hmm. And that was their, like, people talk about rural Ireland, like closing the pubs for the man to go open. That's exactly the same. Just because there's millions of people in New York, and we've hit on this before on the podcast, it's still the loneliest place in the world. Like, it's way lonelier than any little town in Mayo or anywhere in Ireland. You don't have family. Like, family will go down and knock on the door if they don't see you at Sunday Mass, or if they don't see him down at the pub. You could close your door in New York and go in behind the apartment. They're not coming looking for you. But we've seen this even more now, because they don't need to go looking for that guy. He wasn't at the building site Monday to Friday. Yeah, well, none of us are. And now there's the liquor store. And the first week, it's funny you say the first month you didn't get that many phone calls. That doesn't really surprise me, because some people are like, oh, geez, we're off. This is great result. That wears thin very quick. And then when lads start realising they're dependent on the bottle or on the weed or acting a bit too much. So the fear is, how do you get to them guys?
So I'm going to just answer that in two parts. I spent 2 weeks, the second 2 weeks of that first month, making phone calls. I had just a casual conversation after meeting with my bookkeeper. I said to her really honestly, look, I know there's guys out there, young fellas who haven't been here for long enough to get themselves established. I'm thinking construction workers, bartenders, waitresses. And in my mind, the order of priority would have been waitresses, because they don't have the same income capacity typically as a bartender, so they mightn't have had as much put aside. Construction workers who aren't long here, who maybe labouring, who are not established, and then everybody else in the hospitality industry, and then add to that everybody who's undocumented. And I said to you, like, I know there's people here who are, if they're not hurting now, they will be soon. And you know, the Aisling Centre has there's always a contingency fund for, you know, God forbid there's a funeral or whatever it is. Like, there's a compassionate aid fund there to help people. We had purchased $1,000 worth of grocery store, Seatown and Stop and Shop store cards that we were ready to hand to people so that they could at least buy food. Yeah. We weren't getting the phone calls. So mentioned it to Anya, and she said, look, I know a lot of, I'm out of touch with people that are, let's say I don't go to the bars anymore, right? So I'm not in the bar scene.
We just heard the reason why you don't go to the bars.
Okay, so we're square with that, right? There's no further discussion required there. So she made a couple of phone calls and just mentioned to a couple of the lads that, you know, if you are stuck, just remember the Aisling Centre's there. Just because you're not in there for a class or a program doesn't mean you can't reach out. And she herself and her husband had actually received a phone call from one of their mothers, who had had a call from another mother about Johnny down the road, who hadn't been working for 3 weeks, and he was definitely feeling the pinch. But he wouldn't.
So this mother's phone call was made at home?
The mother,
it was made
a mother at home called another mother at home.
Wow.
To say, have you heard, are you in touch with Agnes?
Such and such.
And I talk to her very regularly. And would you ever ask Agnes to check in on Johnny, just see how he's really doing? Because of the feeling he's not doing okay. And Agnes did check in on him, and she sorted him out. You know, she gave him the loan of a bit of money and told him that, you know, things are going to get better. And after we had our conversation, she made a few phone calls and just put the word out there on the street, I mean, literally on the street, to that part of the community that doesn't need the likes of the Aisling Centre anymore, right? That's not, they don't see us as the regular support system. They have their GA games, they have their training, they have their whatever they're into, soccer, pub, couple of nights in the weekend. Life is good when it's good, but then when it stops, where do you turn? If you can't ask your best friend, you're not going to ask somebody, a stranger in a centre that you don't know. So that started a movement among some of the younger guys, and fair play to them. A lot of them had said, you know, I'm okay for this week and next week, but I think the following week I'm going to be stuck. Nobody's putting their hand out looking for something for nothing. Okay, that was the first outreach. Immediately when the centre closed its doors, we started to change the way we deliver our program. So obviously anything that could go online went to Zoom straight away. Music, singing, anything that could go virtual went virtual. But you can't reach 100 seniors by Zoom or Facebook when they either don't have a smartphone or have one and don't know how to use it and don't have internet access or couldn't be bothered. Their main interest is coming to the centre twice a week or 4 times a week to see their friends, and they get the benefit of a well-balanced, nutritious meal. And then they go home and watch TV, and they probably call their kids and grandkids, right? So that's, putting it in a really simple nutshell. So they couldn't do any of that right now. They couldn't even go to the store to get their groceries. So we reached out to our volunteers, and we have an amazing bunch of volunteers. Many of them are Team Aisling members, regular folks. And a lot of people had reached out to us actually to offer to do whatever they could to help, when we figured out what our plan was. So we started twice weekly phone calls to the almost 100 members of the senior group. As the word spread, they were kind of watching out for their other friends who wouldn't necessarily be coming to the centre, and if they weren't hearing from them, they would let us know. So he asked, how do you find somebody that doesn't show up on the job site? I can't answer that one yet for you because it's not the part of the community that we typically have a relationship with. But for those that we do, and I'm talking specifically now about the seniors, if somebody's not answering the phone, I'll tell you that one of our staff members spent a whole day trying to track down a lady who a sister from Ireland had called to say, look, I'm trying to get in touch with Margaret and she's not answering the phone and I haven't spoken to her now in 3 days and we usually speak every day. They called the building super, they called every other senior in the building that they knew. They eventually figured out that the woman had a new phone and didn't know how to use it. So thank God everything was okay, but she didn't stop until she found a way to contact that woman.
I was hoping you were going to tell me Margaret was after going on Tinder there now or something. She was after getting Tinder on her smartphone. She has to hook it up like.
But the good news is Margaret is okay. Margaret is 70-something, late 70s and living on her own. All right, so there's the twice weekly phone calls, and then there's the meal delivery. So we work with while every place is closed down and all you can do is pick up this and that. We alternated with different restaurants and food service vendors of whatever description. We would order meals for the people that on our list of seniors who wanted them. And if they had a partner, if they had a husband or wife or significant other at home, we would offer a meal to them also. So we're now delivering with the help of our volunteers from the alternating to the different establishments around McLean Avenue and Catone Avenue. We're delivering 100 hot meals a week. So even though they're not coming to the centre to meet their friends and having the chit chat and having the dinner, we're calling them to make sure they're okay. And these calls could be 5 minutes, it could be 30 seconds. Yeah, I'm grand, I'm good, I don't need anything, thanks very much, put me down for dinner on Friday, I have to go. Or it could be a 30-minute conversation because somebody's lonely or stressed or feeling isolated. So it's the good old phone call. And how we're going to do things going forward, I don't know. I'm very clear that we have to think outside the box about how we're going to deliver our programs. Maybe we go to public access TV for our chair yoga, and we send an old-fashioned letter in the mail to everybody who used to participate in chair yoga to say, hey, guess what? Sandra's back. The usual time, 12:30 on Friday. She'll be in the centre. You will be at home, but if you go to channel 33 at 12:30, you can do chair yoga with her. So
that'd be great.
Yeah, we're looking into it right now. I don't know if it's going to actually happen, but that's the kind of thing we need to consider. And that's where we are right now. Slainte has taken up the majority of our resources for the last few months, to be really honest with you. That was where we saw the greatest need in the community. So we just jumped on board and did everything we could to make it happen. The good news is I think that the level of applications has dwindled down to a trickle. So, which is good timing because we've more or less exhausted our fundraising capacity. We've tapped on every door. So I don't think there's a whole lot more that, you don't want to squeeze it or bleed people dry either. So for those that have held on, I will say that the little bit they got from Slainte sometimes was just enough to say, this is kind of going off topic, but I'm going to just put this out there. At one point in my life before the Aisling Centre, I was at an event where Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, was being honoured. And the thing that I remember from that event was, he was a remarkable guy, but the thing I remember from that event was to be in a concentration camp and know in your heart that nobody is listening and nobody cares is more difficult to live with than the insufficient ration of food and the hard labour that you would otherwise never contemplate doing. Just knowing that somebody can hear you when you say, I need a hand, or see you and say, can I help you? Even if you're not ready to take the help, to know that somebody is there can be the difference between falling into the depths of despair and being able to just keep your head above water. On a Zoom call with a number of organisations, it was the first Friday at the Irish Consulate. They did a virtual first Friday, and there was something like 75 people on the call. And at one stage, they broke us into small chat rooms, and I had the opportunity to speak with, just like this on Zoom, with a bartender who had been employed in a little place down in the village, the West Village. And I asked her how she managed to still be here. She was one of 3 in an apartment. The other 2 had already gone home. She said that for the month of, I guess from the middle of March to probably for a bartender from the beginning of March, because March is the month that most, you know yourself, Johnny, it's the best month of the year for anybody in the bar trade in New York. So that was gone. From the beginning of March, there was nothing happening. She said that she had her bag packed and was ready to go if she had to. She wanted to stay, but she wasn't really sure how she was going to do it. And then when she heard about Slainte, she knew, okay, if things get really, really bad, I know that someone is there to help. She hasn't applied. She didn't need to apply, thank God. The place that she's worked has opened up again. They're doing takeout service. But just knowing that there was a helping hand available and that somebody was listening sometimes makes the difference between I can't do this and okay, I can make it.
Have you seen a mass exit? Just through myself through the industry and even around, we're both in Sunnyside. There has been a lot, like, and I know, and now some of them was probably always their game plan, you know, at some day, and their hand got forced, obviously, and now it's speeded it up.
Yeah.
And then there was others there that were just, you know, had no other choice. So that's kind of sad. If their hand was forced, you know, the bitter taste in their mouth. But do you think there will be more later down the road? Do you think like that this is a bit of an eye-opener for some, you know? I think if Ireland was in a better shape, like there would have been a bigger exit. But it's not like there was any, it's not like going home it wasn't like you were going back to an opened up Ireland. So I'd say that kept a lot of them here. They were like, well, what's the point? But, you know, so that could be interesting down the road.
So there's nothing scientific here yet because nobody's measuring the data. Here's what I can tell you. Consistently, 80% of the people that we met through Slainte have been undocumented consistently since day one. And we have different numbers every week. And I track them at least once a week. 80 went to 81% one week of the people that we were talking to are undocumented. Now, I think that's an eye-opener. I know that,
yeah,
you know,
it is for me.
Yeah, all the Irish, there's a coalition of Irish immigration centres. We're not an immigration centre, but we're involved with the coalition. And to be able to give them a statistic like that kind of opened people's eyes. The ambassador Mulhall was really appreciative to get the facts, but shocked at the same time. And I think we can all say the same thing. Everything's been great in New York for the last few years. Okay, we won't go to the political situation, but for the regular Joe Soap who's going out to work, bringing home a wage, able to go to the pub a few nights of the weekend, or able to buy the iPod or whatever for the kids, life is good. And being undocumented wasn't the biggest issue. Okay, it's a whole other question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But now, yeah, and it's a major discussion, but we're not going to get into that. The point I'm trying to make here is that now that the well run dry overnight and nobody has any income, people are starting to realise, oh, actually, hang on, there is a large number of undocumented Irish people still living in this country. And what are we going to do about it? So that's definitely, like I said, it's another conversation for another day, but there are people who are very, very aware, newly aware, and very concerned. The other, and this is something that we anticipated, I think it was 60% of the people that we met through Slainte were also working in the hospitality industry and had, everything was completely stopped overnight. So that was a shock, to say the very least. A lot of the girls that I would see in the local restaurants, I know a number of them have gone home. I'm not going to give you a number because I don't know how many, but the word on the street is, again, that's not scientific, but the word on the street is that a lot of them did go home. A lot of bartenders, a lot of wait staff have gone home. I think there was a promise of the construction industry opening up a lot sooner than it was for any other industry, and a lot of essential construction. So if it was, considered essential service, the construction was allowed to continue. So I think there was a level of hope for people in the construction industry that didn't apply to people in hospitality. And, when you say, Johnny, that this whole situation might have forced people's hand, I think you're 100% right there. I know there's families who've been on the fence, for the last couple of years. Okay, will we, won't we, will we, won't we? Yes, income earning capacity, wage earning capacity is so much better here than it is at home. But the quality of, the standard of, which is it? The standard of living and the quality of life. Okay, so the quality of life is much better at home, especially if you have a family. So I do know of a couple of families who've made the decision to go. So were their hands forced? Yeah, I think probably.
It's sad because you made the point there, the financial aspect of it. The financial aspect, when I was in that position, like you sold yourself on that. You were like, yeah, but we won't have this and we won't have that and we won't have this and we won't have that. But then on the 16th of March, boom, that all ended. Like the service industry will never be the same. Like we are now going to have to look at it. Like you're going to have to hire in a whole different manner now. Like, you've no J1 students. So where does the next visa thing? Does kids want to come here? They still do, but who knows what the visa scenario is going to be next year? Are they going to we don't know. Again, we're not going to get into that. But there you go. You mentioned, say, just off the top of your head, the X amount of girls that are gone. There's X amount of bars there now when they do reopen. And the big thing about it is it's intimidating enough to open a bar. But trying to open it with a couple of hundred other bars at the exact same time is I can't even wrap my head around that. So everybody's going to be scrambling for the same staff. So it's a game changer. The whole thing is going to be, and that's a minor problem. We have that problem here, but a lot of these young people have gone home. And the part I've been thinking about, we all know what people like are home, and we love people at home, and we all love this. But it's like, is there an element of shame even for them? Like, you know what I mean? That they're going to arrive home. It's, you're in America, the greatest country in the world, and now you're back here and you've nothing, you've nothing to show for it and all that. I hope that they don't think that way, and I hope they don't have that crap going on. But there is that little element of people that will sort of say that to them, and that's where I'd be afraid that some people probably should go home. You know what I mean? They should go home. This might be, when I say the hands were forced, that might be a realization. It's Ireland. It's not a third world country. Get home, get in the system, get back into work. Like you'll know. Believe me, I know. When you're illegal for such a long time, no different. Having thousands of dollars in your sock drawer is not unusual. Like, you know what I mean? It's great when you go in and find a pair of them socks, by the way, randomly 6 months later. It's happened. And it's been normally right after Super Bowl when you've spent a lot of money on Super Bowl. You're like,
Johnny.
it's great. Well, but then what happens is, then next thing, you're paying taxes and you're like, but you weren't in a system. You weren't paying a pension in America. You weren't paying one in Ireland. On the flip side of what I'm saying is, I hope some of them go home now. I hope some of them actually take this opportunity to realize, you know what, I'm not, there's nothing really happening here. If I get home, at least I've family, I support, I'm in a town, I can make a bill. We have because the Ireland they left and the illusion they have in their head. And the funny thing is, families at home are great. They'll talk down the place to you so much at home. You're missing nothing. It's crap. Sure, geez. They'd be afraid to tell you the weather. They'd be afraid to tell you they had a good time. You'd be like, we have the internet now. I know how good the weather was at home. Stop lying to me. Anyway, I hope it works out for a lot of them. I really do. I worry for the service industry and for these people. I really do.
Yeah, I just want to say something. Like you mentioned, is there an element of shame going home? I with all my heart, I hope there isn't. And now there's one huge benefit straight off the bat to going home, and especially for people who went home early. If you look at the way the Irish government and everybody that was involved in setting up the response to the pandemic in Ireland, how quickly it was put into place, how intelligently it was established, and how well it was adhered to, would certainly puts the US government to shame.
Oh yeah.
So
It
for
was funny.
anybody that
You're
did
100%
go
right.
home is going home to a country where people's health and welfare is number one. It's not the economy. It's not let's get this place back open regardless. Oh, let's do it on Easter Sunday because it's going to be great. Economics is part of it. We all know money is out there. Money's a necessary evil, but money's no good to you when you're dead. And you know,
100%.
I'm not. Don't ever like to get into political conversations. Well, at least not when I'm drinking water. But you know, if you're going home to a country where people, for the most part, I know it's not perfect, and I know there's a lot of people criticising what was done in Ireland. And look, we'll be criticised for Slainte. No,
oh, sure. Listen, you're going to find that. You're 100% right. You're 100%. I've never met anybody, and I know a lot of them, that has went home that was illegal and didn't say they were sorry they didn't go sooner. And I totally agree with it. And when I was younger, I used to think, you're just saying that to humor yourself. But sometimes you look at the life that they've created for themselves. But more what they look at the life that they had here. It wasn't it wasn't all that because you're restricted. You know what you mean? I was here, I don't know how long you're here, Sandra, but I was here for 9/11, and I remember the people stopped flying. People are driving to Florida like for 2-week holidays. You know what I mean? How dangerous is that? Like, even just driving for that length of time, all these things that you do. But it was all for the greater good. Oh, no, we good. There's going to be an amnesty. There's going to be this. There's going to be that. But they were right. Like, you have to tell yourself them things. You know what I mean? But it's the prison mentality, isn't it? You know, don't think about outside. Just think about in the bubble. Think about what we're doing and we'll get through this. You meet them at home now and they're new people. They're new people. Like, who cares about money? But it's always, like you mentioned there earlier about the bartenders thing and the waitress thing. But it was always, they're not myths. We always knew bartenders did well at the time. But at the same time, that day has kind of gone a little bit too since the cash kind of thing ended. And like, at least with the lads going back to construction, they know what they're going to make at the end of a week. And it's great for them. So I'm glad of a lot of them sticking around. But I can see why people in the service industry, it was an easy sell for them. And now for the first time ever, they probably had their parents on the phone saying, please come home.
Yep.
You know, come home. Look how good a job we're doing here. Look what everything is here. It's good. And any young person that's illegal and stuff, and I know a few of them, you're mad. Go home. Get an education. Do something. Go for the visa the right way. Do not do what the rest of us did. Do not spend all them Christmas and funerals and all that kind of thing. I don't mind missing the weddings. I'm glad I missed all the weddings. But
It's such a hard decision though for people in the hospitality industry who are undocumented. They have to make a decision. We're going home, and you're never coming back. Like that's a big decision to make. And I presume a lot of them who did go home were, a lot of the people in hospitality are undocumented. The gravity of the situation, or even if you were here on a visa, if you went home, you might not get back in for another couple of months because of the travel restriction.
Yeah. And then you're at home, and you might have gone for a job interview at home. Like Vincent, my brother, was talking to one of the guys that worked for him, and he just left before it. But he was looking at getting a visa to come back, and his boss wanted to sponsor him and everything. You know, he was an interior designer, and he was working with the lads in Haswells. But now he's stuck at home and
going for a job interview this week in Dublin. But his plan was get home, work in this visa to get back. That's where I think there could be a whole generation are going to get lost here. And like, even look at the kids that fall in love with America after a J1 year, and you
10 years later, and they say, well, I came into J1 in 2018, and then I came back on the other visa, and now I'm still here. There's a whole generation now have missed this summer, and they're down wrecking Cork, I believe, at the moment, Michael. Anyway, they've all took their J1 down to Cork and murder over them down there, but you're welcome to them.
Sandra, the impact on the elderly must have been it's obviously it's a different situation for the elderly compared to people going home who are working in the hospitality industry. But the Ashling Centre was there for old people to give that personal touch. And we can all do Zoom, but it's the personal touch is what really that was so instrumental and so invaluable for the elderly people. So it must be so hard on them for the past couple of months.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're definitely seeing that it's definitely the most resilient segment of the community. The elderly folks are, not in such a hurry to go anywhere, not in such a hurry. They're not running and rushing every day like the rest of us are under normal circumstances, you know.
Yeah.
They're happy to talk with their friends on the phone. They're so happy when the volunteer comes to the door. They might have their mask on and they might not, but they're so happy when someone comes, not because they're getting a free meal, but because they're seeing another human being and they're having a little chit chat. So while they've definitely lost their independence, that sense of independence, when, you know, when they're being told, no, don't go out. And we were telling them on the phone, don't come out. We'll get your groceries for you. Don't dare go to the supermarket because you're the most vulnerable among us. And in fairness, most of them did listen. There's an odd scallywag who you'd see them knocking down around McLean Avenue. You know, you might hear someone at the door, and when you go out and they don't know you're inside, they see you coming and they'll turn and they'll maybe on a Zimmer frame walk down the street as fast as they can. I'm not joking, like, they're amazing. They're a very resilient group of people, I will say that for sure. As the weeks turn into months, you can see a little bit more frustration. But then once the weather started to warm up and people were, started to feel a little bit more okay about coming out with the mask on. Now we'll see the book club girls. Actually, the book club girls, Michael, are still doing their book club meetings by Zoom every week.
No way.
Yes.
Whoa.
Aren't they fabulous?
They were a great bunch. There was about a dozen of them when I was up there last year, Johnny, and they're all sitting around and all just so positive, like, and they had a cake, and it was just, I think anyone who's Irish who's living in New York needs to just go up to the Aisling Centre for just a couple of hours and just see what's going on there. It's
Sandra, can you not open that at the moment? Sorry, Michael, and do social distancing in there. You're not allowed to have it at all?
So, first of all, we're not allowed. Secondly, we don't have a huge amount of space.
Right.
We do have one sort of common room at the back, like a very multi-purpose room. We'll set it up, you know, it's like a function hall, but the maximum capacity is 60 people, the absolute maximum. We're not allowed to right now. And it's one of the things we have to think about, you know, what are we going to do when we are allowed to? Can we bring 60 seniors back into that room and they're sitting shoulder to shoulder when they're there? Yeah. So is it right to do that? What if one of us gets sick? And, you know, you can't live your life in a bubble and it can't be all about the what ifs. But we have to really rethink. We have to jump outside the box and take a really good look at what we're going to do. I honestly don't know the answers yet. I really don't. At
least now, as you say, it's the summer. They can get out, meet in parks themselves, hopefully do their own meetings up. It's just hopefully that's the best way you can do it at the moment, because there's no other really option. Yeah, it is sad for them, but it's thankfully they're still with us. But, you know, on a serious note, like, it could have been a lot worse. Like, you know what I mean? If St. Patrick's Day had gone on, who knows? Like, you know what I mean? We could be talking about a whole different reason why you don't have numbers here. And thankfully it's not at that level.
Yeah. And thank God, you know, any of our seniors who have passed away, and there's not, you know, when you get to that stage, when you're fraternizing with that age group, you know that it's just part of life. You are going to lose one here and there. And anybody that has passed away, and there have been a few, it's all been from their underlying illnesses or natural causes. None of them had, to the best of my knowledge, contracted COVID or died of COVID.
Jeez.
That's good.
Yeah, I know there have been several losses in the community, but definitely, as far as I know, none of our seniors. So, you know, that speaks for itself.
It does, yeah.
Sandra, I know you have to go, but will you just tell us what what Team Aisling did in terms of fundraising and all the goings on? Because I know there was so much going on and everyone did their thing. It was just give us a brief overview on what everyone was up to over the last couple of weeks. I think he ended last Sunday, wasn't it?
Last Sunday. These guys are just amazing. Like crazy in the best possible sense. Actually, there was 300 members of Team Aisling in the Yonkers Marathon 2 years ago, which literally saved it from extinction. It was on its way out. It was on its last leg.
Yeah, it saved the marathon, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the marathon. This past year, there were 600 members of Team Aisling. It was, and I mean, it should be renamed Team Ashling Day. But anyway, that was the marathon, the Yonkers Marathon.
You're Slainte,
Right? So they organized a virtual 5K, or your challenge for the month of May. Started from the very first day of May right through the 30 days of September, April, June, November. Okay, 30 to the 31st of May. And they set up a GoFundMe and invited people to take on their own challenge and do your regular fundraising initiatives, you know, email all your friends, tap mom and dad, and if the kids have a babysitting job, tell them to. Everybody sponsor me because I'm going to walk 5K, run 5K. Frank Brady, who he's on one of our board members, he also writes for the Irish Echo, a great community man, has just had a knee replacement. He did a half marathon.
Did he?
First launch, yep, and raised over $5,000.
Oh. I was patting myself on the back for going out on a bike all week. I was doing brilliant. That's Ava, my niece.
Oh, but you see, that's the thing. That's the thing about Team Ashling. It's you have to figure out what works for you, and you set your own challenge and you go at your own pace. And that's exactly what they did. So the real diehards, like Catherine Flood, was out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and her friends jumped out from behind the shrubs and had two massive big teddy bears. Like, come on, go Catherine, you got this, girl. And somebody else went in front of her. Another friend from Team Ashling went in front of her and drew like the mile markers on the street with chalk. And it was maybe mile 6 for Slainte or mile 16 for Slainte 2020. And kept her going the whole way. And she was doing this on her own. You know, there was no crowd. This was, everybody was doing what they were doing on their own. Breda Carroll.
So Catherine ran a full marathon on the final day, wasn't it?
Catherine ran a full marathon on the final day. Seamus Kane in Queens ran a full marathon. A whole bunch of fun-loving individuals from Sunnyside and Woodside and Maspeth got together in Queens to.
I was there. It was a big. The whole street was filled with Irish people and waving Seamus. And I think he said Catherine roped him into it by mistake. You'll run a marathon, Seamus? And he said, yeah. So he ended up doing one. But there was just, she was seeing it. There was just a line of people, and there was a bit of music outside, and there was a bit of proper social distancing. But it was great to see. And who else did? He did one here in Juniper Park around. Maspeth, and there was someone in Kerry, wasn't there? It was
somebody else did one in Kerry, and then so when you say like about the music, when they finished up, so the finale I think was when Catherine got back from her marathon. But anybody who had run on the day, or people did, you know, like if you looked at the Team Ashling Facebook page, you'd see, you know, okay, so I thought I'd run 100 kilometers this month for Slainte 2020, but I've actually run 260 kilometers thanks to everybody who sponsored me. That was the kind of carry on. Everybody that set their target met it, and they also felt good because they knew they were doing something for people who couldn't do what they could do. On the day, May 31st, very discreetly, very quietly, those that were around to support the family members who had been running were there with their masks. The Ashling Irish Centre Cayley band, the kids were so good. They were sitting on their chairs. They weren't running around. If they had needed a mask, they had a mask. They were 6 feet apart. It was marked out with chalk on the street where they could sit. They had their bag of potato and their bottle of water, and they played for hours and cheered anybody that was running on. And they had a properly socially distanced kind of finale in the car park at the back of the church. There's a big space there, and got their thanks and kind of closed it off. And then they did, Don Doherty and Frankie did a Facebook Live concert and raised another $7,000, I think, on the day. So it's been a massive response. They raised $67,000 on their own initiative for Slainte 2020. And again, it's the community members getting together to do the right thing. You know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and that's Irish people at their best. You know.
And
That's
just
great.
to just finish that, it's absolutely amazing what she did, and fair play to you on. And it was like, I was there last week, and it was great just to see a little community get together. And it was just, I think everyone needed a bit of contact with the real world, you know, just to be out in a group. But if people, the Slainte fundraiser is still open. So if people are looking for help, what are they need to contact you? How do they contact you on the website or through the Ashling Centre? Or is
on the website. So everything is run collectively through the Slainte website. So it's Slainte2020.org. So SLAINTE2020.org. On that, it's a really simple, very user-friendly website. There's a tab to apply. It literally says apply. There's a tab to donate, if you want to donate. So, and the message that we put out at the very beginning was, if you need help, please ask for help. Hit the application button. If you don't need help, please donate if you can. And if you can't, and you know somebody or an entity that can, then let them know what's happening. And people actually listen to that. There's a company in the city. It is a construction consultancy company. Didn't even know there was such a thing. But these guys that work in a company called Limesight, again,
great guys. Pat Ryan, and I know them well. Great guys.
They
really,
took to do a virtual 5K and raised another almost 20 grand for Slainte.
Yeah,
you know,
we
didn't reach out to them. Somebody said to somebody who said to somebody, "Come on, let's do something." These guys.
That doesn't surprise me. They're a great crowd. They're like originally a guy from Dublin, Boylo, that owns it, and Pat Ryan is from Tipperary. He's one of the and John Fitz. They're just that doesn't surprise me at all. But isn't that brilliant? Like, you know what I mean? There'll be a bunch of young Irish girls that work for them that would be very. I'm going to give the girls the credit for that. I'm going to assume it was the girls that come up with that idea. That's brilliant. I'm delighted it was them that you've mentioned them that they did that. That's brilliant. I'm delighted.
Yeah, they were super, really super. So yeah, it's definitely restored. I think definitely restored my faith in humanity. And who knows what's around the corner? Exactly. Don't answer that. Do not answer that. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm fine.
Super.
You know, just taking this one day at a time.
Super.
Guys, this was very enjoyable. Anyway, thank you.
You might give us an update on the building in a couple of months' time or something, Sandra. But thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks. You lads are great crack.
Screenshot the two of you as well. I have you.
Go on, Danny. Hang on. Did you get my slide?
Yeah, got you. Perfect. Yeah.
Thanks. Right, guys, I'll come back when I know what's happening with the building, right?
All right, perfect. Thanks a million, Sandra.
All right, guys.
And that's all for this episode of the Long Haul Podcast. Please hit that subscribe button and keep up to date with all our latest episodes, or check back on some previous shows, including that highly controversial interview with former Kerry County Board Chairman Pat the Bag O'Sullivan on the state of New York GA, as well as podcasts with Dublin footballer Jack McCaffrey and former Galway hurler Johnny Glynn. We appreciate all feedback, so please give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter at The Long Haul Pod.
The liquor was so awful strong, my head went round and round to me away. You Santy, my dear Annie, oh you New York girls, can you dance the polka to me way? Santy, my dear Annie.